Um, Pan, I don't think a moviegoer would have to even be familiar with your work to watch this and get and understand that it's probably autobiographical in some way. Can you talk about where the story came from and what parts of it are autobiographical?
I think I never thought I'd ever wanted to make a movie about a movie inspired from my childhood. As you can see, I try to run away from it, as they would say. So, but in 2010, 11, I was visiting my parents, and they told me that I should go and see my childhood friend. His name was Mohammed Bhai, and he used to be projectionist, and I used to swap my lunch box as a kid with him. And when I met him, he was very sad, and I had never seen him sad like that. And he was fired from his job because the cinema hall where he worked, third generation projectionist, had gone digital, and he did not know how to read or write. He did not know how to run the computer, and the digital technology required, in-depth knowledge of, English and computer and all that. So we sort of both started talking about films and reels, and he was very sad, cynical, that film projectors are now turning into spoons and plates, and film reels are becoming bangles for women, and I said, like, that hit me hard, the way there was a pain in his voice. um, and since I was growing up as a child, there used to be always some stories floating around in the family that no wonder you are obsessed with cinema. As a kid, you used to collect all the junk, colorful glasses, matchboxes. That I had even stolen reel, and we got into trouble because that reel had important scene of India's superstar Amitabh Bachchan. So I ended up in juvenile home for a while. So all that was there. But these stories, like how we tell anecdotes, were just floating around. But after that meeting, I was traveling back to the city. There was a 5-hour long bus ride, and in that bus there was an Indian wedding party. And there were all these women beautifully decked. I mean, as you probably know, Indian weddings are super colorful, and I had 5 hours to kill. So I was just looking at all the color palettes on all these women and thinking, okay, she might not know. She could be wearing Steven Spielberg or Indian director Manmohan Desai, or there were all these thoughts were there. But especially in 2019 or so, I realized, okay, it's going to be 10 years of disappearance of film, of celluloid. And maybe there was something to be done, but not really nostalgia or something sentimental. But how can one celebrate the beauty which used to be in cinema hall? The way I had fallen in love with light, and the way I was mesmerized being in dark places. And so there were a lot of beautiful memory, which was so simple and organic and very real. And as a filmmaker, when we grow, we just get burdened by what we read, what we see, the demand which increases. And somewhere I wanted to find that simplicity and that innocence, that as a child we were just totally fearless. We were able to do everything. We had no fear of being judged. Or, as the tagline of the movie says, like, when you have nothing, nothing can stop you.
So when you start putting this film together, Dear, how do you get involved?
Right. Yeah. So I think for me, it was more the filmmaker than the film specifically in this case, because I'd grown up watching, or some of the most transformative experiences and of watching Indian cinema for me happened watching Nalin's earlier movies, which were namely Samsara, Valley of Flowers, and Angry Indian Goddesses. And I was sort of, because India is known for a certain type of cinema. We make popular cinema in India, which is slightly extravagant, over the top, a mashup of genres. And while all of that is great, I was sort of missing, authentic storytelling that could be reflective of life as I've seen it in the country, or that people around me have seen it and experienced it. Something that's immersive, emotional, entertaining, but also real. And when I did watch his movies, and my wife introduced me to them, who's Ukrainian. My wife is Ukrainian, and she introduced me to Nalin's films. I was like, how is it that me being an Indian, I've missed these movies, and how is it that the whole world knows about it and I don't? And I said, you know, sometimes when you watch something, you kind of decide that you need to meet that person. It's like a weird calling. I don't know. It's something strange that happens in our business. And I was like, I have to meet him, and I chased him down until he took a meeting with me. And I was like, where do you come from? Like, what is your backstory? And, you know, how have you started making movies like this? Because your name is Pan Nalin, and, you know, I can't figure out, you know, place you on the map in India. And he then did tell me a story where he came from, and essentially that's what you see here. And I was very moved by it, and, you know, I called him a couple of days later, and I was like, Nalin, I would like to buy the rights to your life and possibly make a movie on it. I think it would make an incredible movie. And he said what he said earlier today. He said, I don't want to make a movie about my childhood. I've spent all my time trying to get away and, you know, make movies about. There's so many great things to make movies about. And we left it at that. And then I think, you know, a couple of years of the, you know, while streaming was taking over, and we were losing that that really magical, wondrous experience, the shared experience of going to the cinema, and something that I felt a lot about as well, because I joined the business keeping in mind my childhood of, you know, spending hours and hours in the cinema, in the movie theater, and it being a very transcendental, almost spiritual experience, you know, in terms of old, you know, Indian spirituality. That's what the cinema experience was. And now suddenly when I'm entering the business, it's going away, and everyone's like, oh yeah, just, you know, watch everything on Netflix, or, you know, watch everything on the platforms. So I think the timing was right, and it's something that was boiling inside him, and he eventually, you know, developed the story and wrote a script, or some version of a script, and he called me one day and he was like, you know, I want to produce, I'm going to make a movie, and I think you might be interested in producing. I was like, I'd do it no matter what the story was, but then it turned out to be this, so it's a good decision.
Okay, so you start making the movie Pan, and then you have to cast a kid. How do you find this one?
Very tough, this one to find. Yeah. I think earlier, as the Samai's character is almost in every single frame, so first thought was we have to find a professional, so-called professional child actor. But as they pointed out, in India, the child actor grow up watching popular Indian cinema, so their idea of acting is so different. You know, everything is loud, everything is over the top, and there was just disappointment after disappointment as we continued auditioning, you know. So ultimately, a casting director who had worked with me, he also worked with Ang Lee on Life of Pi, and he had found Suraj Sharma, you know. So Dilip, and we said, why not we go, let's take a risk. You know, we have, in the past, we both have worked with non-actors. So why not we look for non-actors, you know, and go in places and countryside where kids very rarely go to see cinema, you know. So, and that, we hit the jackpot with that idea. So after about 3,000 audition, you know, when we came across Bhavin, so he comes from a Rabari tribe in a small village in the same region, and they used to be camel herder. So now they have some cattle, you know, and he is going to a small government school, as he calls a backbencher. But, one of the first thing we did was, we photographed, videos of his eyes, you know, extreme close-up of Bhavin's eyes, about 30, 40 different emotions, that when you are scared, when you are happy, when you are excited, when you are missing your mother, when you are hungry, and camera stayed very close to the eyes, and we came back to the production base and put all those eyes together, one after another. No story, no words, nothing, and we just beamed it and watched it on a little bigger screen. And me and my editor, we had goosebumps. We were moved by just looking at his eyes, you know, and we knew we had found our Samai, you know, and he already had this natural body language, you know, he's natural, so he was able to understand what we were trying to do at a very fast speed. And also that whole idea of doing hack job, you know, making things out of nothing, it was already kind of a natural to him, you know. So, well, that's how, and then of course we had a 4-5 weeks of so-called workshop, which was titled How Not to Act Workshop for him.
That sounds brilliant, actually. Bhavin, what was most fun about making this, and what was really hard about making it?
સૌથી મજા શું લાગી અને સૌથી અઘરું શું લાગ્યું પિક્ચર બનાવ્યું?
પહેલાં તો એ જ વાત મને પિક્ચર બનાવવામાં પહેલાં તો એ મજા આવી જ્યારે ટ્રેન છે ને ટ્રેનમાં હાલતી ટ્રેનમાં ચડવાની ખૂબ જ મજા આખા શૂટમાં ટ્રેનમાં ચડો 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 અને સૌથી અઘરું એક ફેક્ટરીમાં લાગ્યું જેમાં છે ને આગ ને બધું એવું ગરમ ગરમ હતું એટલે
He said he loved the most part he enjoyed was jumping into running trains all on and on and getting off the running trains. He loved that and he could do that many times. The toughest part for him was in the factory because we were shooting in a real factory and it was extremely hot. And he had to perform and give takes, so pursue or never do, yeah. So he was really feeling hot, in shooting that scene.
Bhavin, did you feel like an ideal boy on this movie?
આપણે એક પેલું પોસ્ટર હતું ને આદર્શ બાળકો તો તું આદર્શ બાળક છે કે નહીં
બધા નજર ઉપર જોવાનું હોય અમુકના નજરમાં હું આઈડલ છું અમુકના નજરમાં હું બેક બેન્ચર છું
Said it all depends on your point of view. For some people, I'm an ideal boy. For others, I might be a backbencher, naughty boy.
Naughty boy.
That's such an already smart answer to give as a young performer. So Cyril, you've worked with Pan before. You scored, I believe, Samsara, right?
Yes, I did. We started with Nalin's first short film.
Yeah.
A
So
long time ago.
what's it like making music for his movies, and how did that collaboration work here?
I grew up a lot. I truly believe in the band effect. Like you put several musicians together and they do something bigger than just them, And that's what we do basically. That I give some ideas, Nalins gives some other, and we speak like this, basically until we come to the last theme. But I wanted to say something tonight because sometimes you do things unconsciously, you create some theme, you create some music, then it fits on the screen, that is good, and you don't know necessarily why you don't have all the control on everything, on the creation. And tonight I realized that when I just came into the theater for a couple of minutes, that the main theme with the piano was finally a theme we were talking about the next travel he will do. Actually, the piano, the melody, was talking about the future, about what's going to come next, and with the sound of it and with the melody, which is based on a kind of I would say, Indian tonality, but just in the harmony. I just realized that, I'm sorry to say, but did you thought about this? Yeah.
I think very often when we do music, instead of directly starting working with pictures and edit, we often look for feelings, and sometimes he's screaming at me, when can I see something? I said, start composing.
No, we often work on keywords.
Keywords, yeah.
And I think that's great. And for me, it's very important. 20 years ago, I met with a composer that I love, which is Gabriel Yaret, a French composer. And he said, I never work on the picture, I always work on the script. And as a young composer, I was like, this guy is crazy. It's totally crazy. How can you not compose on the picture? 10 years later, I end up with the same conclusion. And I think what is great, and it's not a problem for Nalins, that we don't start with a picture at first, or very, very, very few images or picture or scene, but we start with an idea. And I think for a director it's very important for several reasons, but the main reason is that the director never does exactly the film he wanted to do, rarely. So with the music going back to the script, going back to the origin, that's bring a lot into the story, the final storytelling of the story. And then when it's okay in terms of musical themes, then we go back on the picture and he said, oh, this could work here, this could work here, this could work here. And then we adjust it on the picture, which is almost nothing at the end, you know.
Well, look, something must be in the water pan with filmmakers these days because everyone's making movies about the movie experience. I mean, the similarities between, I mean, the kind of eerie, between this and The Fabelmans, like, you guys told the same story. It's like, it's kind of uncanny. I mean, it's kind of wild. I mean, and then other people like Empire of Light and Babylon and all these movies, all these movies that filmmakers have been making. Do you think over the last couple of years there's been a reflection in filmmakers about like what got them into making movies? They've had this time to think about it.
Yeah, it must be so. I was the first one, but anyway.
Oh no, because you started making this one like 3 years ago.
I started a long time ago, but
Yeah.
but I think it's very true what you said. You know, it's a great question because the more I listen to other filmmakers, I think it all comes from certain ache and longing of this beautiful dark place just going away, you know. So I'm sure it started in 2014-15 in many filmmakers' mind when streamers were taking over, you know, and it was expanding at such a high speed that we wonder what's going to happen to cinema hall. And I keep moving between US, Europe, and India, and everywhere I went, there were literally some of the cinema I went to will shut down, you know. This is pre-pandemic, you know, they were just closing. So I think there was a fear of something just slipping away, especially when you have shot with movies and you have experience. Like I started with cinema hall, you know, my movies, my first, second, even my documentaries I released as a theatrical experience. So, and then I think during pandemic, it is certainly that introspection, you know, with meditating on yourself and like, what should I do, you know, and make movies about movies because suddenly the life didn't look so interesting outside us, you know. It was very dark time and whatever was going around. So I thought everyone seeked inspiration, I guess, you know, that's what I understand from many interviews I've been reading, that, okay, why not I go back to why did I fall in love with cinema? Why did I become a filmmaker? And that could be the reason, you know, that I was told that first time, almost from every continent, there is a movie about movie, you know. And also many films talk about that quality of light, the spiritual quality, the physical quality, the scientific quality. And in a way, it's kind of a little spiritual awakening for a lot of these filmmakers, I guess.
And I love also like the food, the use of food in the movie is sort of, it's wonderful because it also points to the food, like the craft of food. Like you find art and craft in food the way you know her son is finding the craft and the art of movies. I mean,
I think, you know, as it was loosely inspired from my own childhood, and there used to be 4 or 5 obsession in the family, and food was one of them. And so in order to simplify the structure, you know, I had said that this film should stay with 5F, you know, which is food, film, friends, family, and all going towards future. So that'll just give me, you know, kind of a structure and focus to stay on the film. And for young character of Samay, you know, to win the heart of Fazal, you know, that drought goes through his stomach. So, so he must sort of, you know, win, and he knows that. And second, if you're familiar with Indian cinema, we have a, you know, also term called masala movies, you know, which is basically spice, you know, where you put all little ingredients to spice it up. So there were many, you know, references to the food and my mother used to be great cook. So in order to prepare these dishes, I called my brother that, look, you come and cook because this food is not really exported. It exists only in one region. Also, it's vegetarian, so, you know, there's not many takers for vegetarian food.
oh, I love it. It's like the secret thing in the movies that you get this great food movie too at the same time. So, assuming that you learn something about what you do every time you do it, what did you learn about movie making from working on this?
You know, I think for me, it was really the interaction with the audiences that we've had globally that has been the biggest lesson for me. And like, it's been a direct conversation that we've had with people watching it in a large screen experience. From our premiere at Tribeca, where we won an audience award, to a bunch of other festivals like Mill Valley, where we won an audience award, or Seminci in Spain, which is Valladolid, where we won the main prize, the Golden Spike. The last film that won there was, Indian film that won there was about 45 years ago. And I think that across all of these experiences, I just came across so many interesting people, and it was in a post-pandemic world. We had all been in confinement for 18 months on and off. So going out into the world and experiencing people through the film was incredible. We were lucky that we were able to come out in cinemas in Spain, in Germany, in Sweden, in Norway, in Israel, in Taiwan, in India. And we're set to come out in Japan with Shochiku, which is the studio that does all the Kurosawa and Ozu movies. They've acquired the film. Medusa in Italy, and then we're in cinemas right now in the US with Samuel Goldwyn Films. And I feel like just even interacting with these distributors, which is such an important part of the business, but again during the pandemic suddenly completely threatened part of the business. Seeing what the technique they're using to draw people back into the cinema, I think there was something really inspiring about that for me. And I think that's something I'm going to take away for years to come. The learning.
Yeah, the learning from this experience. First of all, it was different because Nalin told me about his story, not in details, a long time ago. And the real story is that when you were a kid, you say, later I want to be a movie, not a director. That's a difference. And but so it's especially because we know each other since a long time, so it was more personal, and so it makes the journey until today very special. But other than that, in my experience, in my entire work, that I always did love film and music. I always was in this world. For me, it's a way of living. My DNA is into independent movies, exactly the kind of movie you saw tonight. And I'm not going to change that for nothing.
I think for Bhavin, since this is his first film, we should ask him if he wants to keep making movies.
તારી પહેલી ફિલ્મ છે તને ફિલ્મ બનાવવાની ઈચ્છા છે વધારે
ફિલ્મ બનાવવાની ઈચ્છા ફૂલ છે
Yes.
લવ સ્ટોરી વાળી અને ફાઇટિંગ વાળી.
Yes, he definitely wants to do more movie, but next time with more action and fighting and love story.
Romance, yeah.
And romance, yeah.
I liked his moves in the movie. He had some good moves.
You get it.
And so for you, what did you feel like making this? You kind of learned about what you do.
I think for me it was like one big long unlearning process rather, because as a filmmaker, as I said, we just start making life complicated with so many things, and especially in cinema, if very often we are told it's kind of, let's say, cinema is imitation of life. And so even when I was like writing dialogue, I used to wonder that, okay, if cinema is imitation of life, then why 2 hour people have to talk beginning to end non-stop? Why there should be dialogues? Because our real life, if we look at our 24 hours, we maybe talk 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, but mostly we spend in silence, and why not drama advance in silence? That was a big learning for me, that I said, okay, this first time I have a young producer, so I can do whatever I like. He wouldn't protest. No, I'm joking. Otherwise, normally, earlier the producers say, oh, for 6 minutes there's silence, cut it out, or no one is talking. This is where people are walking out. And so I thought silence in cinema is massively misunderstood. And so every time I've tried to push a little bit the envelope that, we do have our own internal dialogue happening when we are watching the movie. We forget that, and so that I realized I was not sure whether it's going to work or not, I mean, you edit, you finish the film, no one has seen it, and you don't know, can you hold some sequences without any dialogues, even though while shooting we did have dialogue, but in editing I chose to have scene without the dialogue, because many of the scene I shoot with dialogues, and then I do the same scene without dialogues. So, and there are quite a few examples where I was able to find that liberation. Okay, no lines here.
Well, so maybe before you wouldn't have gotten away with the sequence where you go to the factory and show how things are made with spare
Yeah.
parts. I mean, that's something you wouldn't have done before?
I think I did once, when I did my first feature, for example, Samsara, we had a very long sequence where this Buddhist monk who had married and had kid, then like Siddhartha, he leaves his wife and son, abandons them, and decides to renounce the world and become a monk again. So this is in the climax, okay? So there is 11-minute journey from the moment he leaves his wife and son while they are sleeping and he escapes. And till he reaches a monastery, there's about 11 minutes. So when I did that, this is where the first acts, like Caesar, every distributor, we are not, Miramax released the film and said, we are not releasing the movie if you keep that, because this is where everybody's walking out, and but there was a fair kind of a thing. We did a 2-cut, one with those silences in the movie, and second one with 8-minute removed without, where the silence is not there. So in the post-test screening, these questions were asked, and luckily it was done honestly. So when my version came with the silence, when moderator asked that, okay, how did you like the film and whatever, and then said, but what do you think about the part where no one talks? And people said, which part? So I think that's where I got courage. I said, okay, this can be pushed.
Yes.
So I think, here, if you really take the minutes, we do have quite a few sequences besides the factory where we know, because as a filmmaker, I always believed audience is always ahead of me. Audience is always smarter than me.
A great way to approach things, I say. Well, let's see if people have questions. We don't have a microphone, so speak as loud as you can, and then I'll repeat the question.
She's asking why he cut his hair.
Okay. Why get your hair cut?
Extension. He said it was extension. I mean, he had a long hair, but extension with the wig.
Second question, recipe of patra and dal dhokli, please, from the
It's a recipe question.
So recipe question, we have taken it seriously, especially it came from our Italian and Japanese distributor. So when we delivered the film, they thought they'll ask bio of a filmmaker or actor. He said, no, where is the recipe? So now we do have a recipe book, which is, we had to make,
Yeah, you should find it on our website.
Yeah, you will find it on our website, the recipe book, yeah. It's on public demand.
Fantastic.
What language was the film in? Where is the area in India? And is that area, it's amazing that the kids there was no school in their village. And how long was the train ride? Was that for real?
Yes, so I think this...
You have to repeat the question.
Well,
Yeah,
it's a lot of questions about the area and specifically like language and yeah.
So the area is in northwest of India, Gujarat, and within Gujarat there's one particular region called Saurashtra, which is where we shot most of the film, and it's quite often that kids take bus or a train half an hour to 1 hour away. In this case, it's about 1 hour away to a small town where there's school. Sometimes even if you have a school in village, it must be just for early grade, but moment they are in like grade 4 or 5, they have to travel, and it's still very normal, even though the schools are growing at very rapid speed across India. And this region is also known for a lot of different ethnic groups who live there, who have come from Egypt earlier on, then the Arabs, and 4 centuries ago, the Africans came and settled down. And it's also, I guess, the only last place on earth where there are Asiatic lions, so there's a wildlife sanctuary in nature, in natural habitat you can find the last breed of Asiatic lions. So that's, and the railway you see is all during the British time. They had constructed meter gauge railway line. And most of the activity there is agricultural, but the people who come there are entrepreneur, they've been traveling all around the world, and Gujaratis, they are known as Gujaratis. You can find them almost everywhere in the world now, doing some or other kind of business.
Those films that you had in the movie, were you given rights to just short clips, or did you create some of those?
That I think Dheer can answer. It was his nightmare to get.
It's about the clips in the movie from the various films.
Yeah, a lot of them are actually popular Indian Bollywood movies. Some of them are Nalin's earlier movies that we've had to license. He charged me a lot of money. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare. But I think more than a nightmare, there's a lot of cultural and narrative relevance to the clips, because if you see, and this is something that was pointed out to us, when we were already quite deep in the process of it, but there's a film in there that the kid watches, which is it's a movie called Jodha Akbar, which is a period film about an Indian, a Mughal Muslim king and an Indian Hindu princess getting married with each other. And someone pointed out how that's very similar to the friendship that that Samay has with the projectionist who's Muslim. And it's sort of meant to be a reflection of the harmonizing times that once were prevalent in India, but now that's slowly, or not slowly, but rapidly changing with some sort of, religious extremism that's plaguing the country. So it's meant to also be a reflection of that. So it has a lot of, small nuanced relevance to it, but it can also just be enjoyed as, as something that plays in the background.
Was that communicated in the movie that the projectionist was Muslim?
Was it communicated in the movie that the projectionist was Muslim?
So it's not outright there, because we didn't want to make it preachy specifically about religion, but his name is Fazal, and Fazal can only be really a Muslim name. And then there's that one shot right at the end when he's outside his house, and you see that there's a blue color, beautiful mosque in the background. So it's sort of meant to be a representation of, the ethnicity that he comes from.
Thank you.
The lead character seems so young, and his friends seem so young to be making such decisions in their life. And I wondered, did that also mirror your life as far as how young you were, and how long did it take for you to realize your dreams?
It's a question about the kids in the movie and how they were very young to be making such big decisions and stuff. And did that mirror your experience as a child?
I think pretty much so. But it's not exceptional when you look at India or Africa. I don't think my story was anything exceptional. When we were a kid, especially because I left my home not as young as in the movie. I left when I was 13 and a half or about 14. But we did do wild things, and very often, even when we were filming this movie, we came across a lot of children, and even the local villagers, something they needed, they just manufactured, or they just collected pieces of junk, and and like there's the field where we had Samay's house. The owner had used the motorcycle chain to create a water pump to pump the water out of well, and he had done it himself. So he'll start his motorcycle and he'll pump. And there was another neighbor whose field was very far, and every time the cows would come and eat the crop. So, he had brought 2 old Nokia phone, and he had, he would, every time the cow will touch the wire, his phone will ring back at home and he'll come to chase the cow. So, they were just incredible. What we call, there's an Indian word for it, it's called Jugaad. And Jugaad literally means, which is also this company's name, but it's kind of a hack job where you make things, even when you
Life
don't
hack. We call it life hack.
Yeah, life hack. Yeah, exactly. So you would, it just filled of life hack. So those decisions we did do as a kid. What you see with the light bulb, taking out, and trying to make a projection system, and all the mirrors used to go missing in the house, and ultimately the idea of shutter we figured out, not exactly like in the film, but you might have seen there used to be toys for the children with about a minute clip, where you can project movie, and they were very popular. There was actually a small film projector with a light bulb. So we realized that we had everything. We had the light, we had the lens, we had the film reel, what we never understood was how is the light cutting the two frame, which is, you know, between the two frame, the darkness, the little dark bar. So that was with the with the help of Projectionist, you know, we sort of figure it out. And I think there were quite a few other things which other kids were also doing. You know, they would just end up making some kind of a cart, or there was a lot of craftsmanship also in terms of making their own clothes. Like two or three of my friends, they always made their own clothes. You know, they used to just sit there and stitch, you know, on a sewing machine and make their own shirt. And yeah.
Well, all of you, I want to thank you all for coming tonight and bringing this lovely film. I didn't mention my name, I'm Robert Abele, but I want to thank you all for coming and being here, and Pan, Bhaveen, Cyril, Dear, for bringing this movie.
Thank you, Robert, thank you so much.